Alright, so for today we are going to be graphing inverses of exponential functions. Now what we're going to be dealing with is base 2 today, and graphing inverses of those. Now we're going to refer to the problems back on Monday on the 27th, and you can go back to that video or go back to those notes if you want. But we're going to be graphing the inverses of the two examples from those notes. Okay, so we're going to have our table. Okay, we're going to pull the tables, and if you go back and look at your graphs on those notes, where the function -2 to the x power and 3 times 2 to the x minus 3, and these are the base 2 parent points. Okay, and these were the points that we had. Okay, and this was a -1 right here. Okay, these are the points we had that we found after the transformations to their parents. So what are we going to do? Well, we have our transformations. We did our transformation, and remember, if we want to find the inverse of something, we're going to switch the x and y values to graph its inverse. Okay, so we're going to graph these inverse, so that means we've got to switch our x and y values. So it means we're going to have the point -1/2, -1, -1, 0. We're going to have -2, 1. And we're going to have -4, 2. In which we're going to now graph those. So we're going to go down here, and we're going to take those graphs right here so we can see them. Okay, so we're going to have -1/2, -1, -1/2, -1. Okay, we're going to have -1, 0. Okay, we're going to have -2, 1. Okay, and we're going to have -4, 2. 4, 2. Okay. Now, if you remember, we go back, okay, and we look at a base function. If we want to find its transformation or its inverse, remember it reflects over the y is equal x line, which means everything is going to switch sides. Okay, it's going to reflect diagonally, which is actually going to, when I draw this, instead of here, this is going to get larger and larger as we go on this side. Okay, and what's going to happen is we're going to have a new asymptote. It's going to look like this. My asymptote now changes to a vertical asymptote. Okay, so this vertical asymptote is going to be at x is equal to 0 instead of y is equal to 0. Now my domain, remember, if you go back to inverses, remember our domain and ranges should flip. Okay, so if we go back and look at these, if my domain was all real number, my range would all be all real numbers. My domain, or my range, was -infinity to 0. Now look, my domain, -infinity to 0. Okay, now we didn't have an x-intercept, but notice we have an x-intercept now. Where's my x-intercept? My x-intercept is now at -1, 0. Well, before I had a y-intercept at -1, 0. Now I don't have a y-intercept. So notice how everything flipped and also switched points. Okay, so there would be my graph. So now let's look at this one. Here are my parent points. These were my transformations. Now I want to do my inverse. So my inverse function, remember this would be my inverse function. These would now be my inverse function. Okay, would have be 1 and 1/2, comma -1, 0, 0, 3, 1, and 9, 2. Okay, so now we're going to graph that. So we have 9, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2, 3, 1, 0, 0, and -1, or 1 1/2, negative 1. What did I do wrong? Oh, it's negative 1. Sorry. Negative 1/2. I knew that I did something wrong. Alright, so to go right there. I just left my sign when I did it. So that should be a negative 1 and 1/2. That's what we had. I just didn't read it off my graph. So I was going to say, wait a minute, that's not going to graph, right? So it's going to have something like this. Now, where is that asymptote? Well, that asymptote before was at y is equal to negative 3. Now it's going to be x is equal to negative 3. My domain, let's write that better. My domain is now negative 3 to infinity. All the numbers from our range. X-intercept 0, 0. Y-intercept at 0, 0. So, sorry about that little confusion there. So, remember this point, it would have been a negative 1, negative 1/2. I just didn't flip it over. Alright, so there is my inverse. Now, tomorrow's is also going to be the inverse of base 3. But wouldn't it just be the same? You're going to take the points from the notes from the 28th, and you're going to take those locations, and you're going to flip them. Okay? So that's what you're going to go with those. Alright, so use this for both days.